Okay. Before we start talking about the fight against Marcos Breno that you have coming up, I want to talk about the last fight with Stots because the process and the build-up was so long that now that you've had some time to kind of reflect on that fight, how do you what comes to your head when you think about the fight with Stots?
Yeah, I think about a very exciting fight. I think about a very anticipated fight. A lot of people were really wanting that fight to happen the next day, even though it seemed like it took fucking 5 months for it actually to transpire. And then when I look at the actual performance, I look at me being that guy. That's a fight where I think I won all rounds, but maybe one round, and that's the third round. I went back and I watched the fight 7 or 8 times now, and every time I just don't really fucking see what the judges saw. Obviously it wasn't too violent of a fight. I didn't have too many strikes on him, but he didn't have too many strikes on me either. I wasn't really going for submissions left and right. He wasn't going for submissions left and right. The only really thing that took place was me controlling him basically the entire fucking fight. One thing I do agree with is that if a guy is on bottom and he's throwing up a lot of fucking strikes and throwing up submissions left and right, then he is winning the fight. Just because you're on top doesn't mean you're winning. But that's not the case. That's not what happened in that fight. I was on top of him the entire time and he wasn't really fucking doing anything. He didn't get up. He wasn't causing any scrambles, going for submissions, hitting me with anything. So I don't really fucking understand how I lost that fight. But, one step forward, it is what it is. That's in the tailwind. My eyes are set on Marcos Breno and beating the fuck out of him. And I know and at the end of the day, I'm going to fight Raufeon Stots again and I'm going to beat the shit out of him again.
I remember after the fight, I think it was in the press conference right after, you said about how you were convinced that you won the fight, but also maybe there was something about your style or the MMA kind of scoring criteria that isn't lining up. You mentioned kind of tricking the judges and how that has become part of the game. Is that something you still kind of believe has halted your progress, maybe?
Yeah, it 100% is. The thing about MMA is it's an imperfect sport. The way to judge it is imperfect, and I think it always will be. There's just no way to just absolutely know who won the fight. In one mind, maybe somebody thought somebody got hit harder than the guy next to them thinks that. It's just very imperfect. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter what the fucking whole world thinks. Doesn't matter if everybody's in the arena and 20,000 people think somebody won, but 3 people think the other guy won. It all matters on those 3 people. So, when these fighters go out there, myself included, when you go out there, you have to keep in mind that it is only up to these 3 people. So you got to kind of trick them. You got to have a lot of volume. One thing I didn't have in that fight was a lot of volume, even though he didn't either. But if I just had just volume, if I was just touching him with shots that didn't even hurt him, if I was even like tapping his shoulder, flicking him in the face, it doesn't fucking matter. So these dumbass judges, they probably would have thought I'd be winning that fight. So you take that into mind. You have a little tricks up your sleeve to have it look so much worse than it actually is. Because again, it's not having the world think that you want to fight. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks about a fight. It's all up to these 3 fucking judges.
I know that you love trash talking, right? Like it's clear to see. But with how long that build up to the Stotts fight was it difficult to kind of get yourself motivated to go again right after?
Not really. I'm a very motivated fucking guy. I love the violence in this sport, but I also love talking shit. So the build up took like 6 months. It seemed like 3 years, but the good thing about it is I love talking shit. So it was just fun to me. Everything was fun to me. Obviously, I like fighting more than I like talking shit, but either way, everything was fun about that shit. And again, it was against a guy that I really fucking hate, which had it more fun in my book. If you're fighting a guy that you don't really care about, you don't really hate, it's not that fun. But I love that I was able to get in the face of Raufeon Stots and just call him a little bitch and a pussy. And it just made it even better that always in the back of my mind, knowing that I'm going to be locked in a cage with him for 25 minutes. So obviously you really want the fight to happen the next day, but I'm a guy that just loves every day that I have, whether it's fight day or not fight day, I'm going to live and love my life. I love training. One thing in this sport is I absolutely fucking love it. A lot of these guys in this game don't actually love this sport. They kind of treat this as a job. They're in it for the fame or the money or, what have you. Maybe it's the only thing they're good at. The thing with me, I'm good at a lot of fucking things. There's a lot of things I could have done. I chose this because I fucking love it. I love going to practice. So with that whole build up, whether it was 5 or 6 months, I enjoyed every part of it. And I view a very similar situation happening when we fight again.
With that being said, I mean, I know that there's still some time left before Bellator 294 on March 21st, but this has been the quietest build-up I can remember you having to a fight in some time with Marcos Breno. I know that you are not the type of guy to give your opponents a hell of a lot of compliments, but what do you see in him that he does well?
I mean, honestly, one thing that I always do in my interviews is I always tell the truth. Nothing about this is fake. So when you ask that question, nothing comes to mind. I don't think he's good anywhere. Unfortunately for him, he sucks. There's nothing I can do about it. I want to be able to say he's good in a particular area, but that would just be me lying, and I don't want the fans to think that I'm a liar. So he's not very good anywhere. I think that I'm better everywhere by a long shot. On the feet, he seems like more of a striker than he is a ground guy, but that's fine. I'm very good on the feet. I'm very tall for this weight class. I'm 5'10". He's a little midget at 5'6". So it's going to be hard for him to get into range and land these shots. He throws a lot of power shots. Against his fight against Josh Hill, he threw a lot of power shots. And when he did land, it seemed like he fucked up Josh Hill pretty good, but Josh Hill is a little bitch. So we don't really know, how hard those shots were. But again, a guy like me that's 5'10" against a guy that's 5'6", it's going to be hard for him to land those. Obviously, this is MMA and this is crazy shit. If he does land that, my lights could go out. Anybody can knock anybody out. I just don't see that the case. If that doesn't happen and he doesn't land a lucky punch, then I just absolutely take him to school. If it's on the feet, I'm going to pick him apart. And obviously on the ground, I can also pick him apart. Nobody is better than me on the ground in this game. And if it does go to the ground, then I think it's a TKO or submission. And if it stays on the feet, it's either going to be a knockout or TKO.
Obviously, I have to ask you as well about the event the next day with Stots facing Patchy Mix in the final of the tournament. Who do you have as a favorite in that matchup? And I'm assuming that if you had your way, you would want Stots to win so that you can face him for the title at a later date. That would be my guess in a rematch, but I don't know. Who would you rather win that fight?
I mean, to me, the ideal situation is the big jumbotron above them crashes down and hits both of them, and they both get fucking hurt. But I don't really have too much of a prediction for that. I think Patchy maybe could catch him in the first couple of rounds if he does, when you're dry and you don't have the Vaseline and blood and sweat dripping on you. But if it does go to the later rounds, I think it favors Stots. Both guys aren't very good. They're both more grapplers. I think it's going to be more of a fight that takes place on the ground, but who fucking knows? I don't really care. To tell you the truth, I forgot that fight was even happening. Both guys are so fucking boring. Nobody cares about those guys. It's so funny. It's for the title, and both of them are fucking little pipsqueaks, and they're so boring. It just is crazy to me. So I don't really have a prediction. I hope I can run into them in Hawaii. I know they're the day after me. But again, I need to stay focused. I need to have my eyes set on Marcos Breno, because first things first, I got to take care of business with him. I'm going to have fun this fight. All this shit has been fun to me. And obviously, first things first, beat the shit out of Marcos Breno. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't think about Raufeon Stots and beating the shit out of him still to this day.
The final question I have is the tournament obviously that ends the day after your fight was building up to the winner facing Sergio Pettis after he had to pull out, and then the interim title and everything like that. It was recently announced that he's not going to be fighting the winner as of yet, as he's going to be entering a different tournament and stuff. I wonder what you made of that, because the end goal, I know that you had this big rivalry with Stotts that you wanted to finish that off, but at the end of the day, the end goal was to face Pettis for the world title. I'm just curious what you've made of the way that the tournament's played out.
Yeah, well, when you have a big name like Patricio Pitbull coming down, he's a guy that a lot of people see as one of the MMA GOATs. He's accomplished a lot in this sport. When he goes down in the weight class, he kind of gets first come, first serve. So him versus Pettis, I see Patricio beating Pettis anyways. I don't think Pettis is very good. I think even if Patricio Pitbull has a bad weight cut, or if he doesn't perform as well, I still think he kicks the shit out of Pettis, because Pettis fucking sucks. So I just think the only difference is the winner of Patchy versus Stots is they're going to face Patricio Pitbull, which isn't really too big of a deal. Yeah, honestly, I do really want to beat the fuck out of Stots. He's a guy that I need to beat the fuck out of. But I also think about a fight with me and Patricio Pitbull, and I think that would be one of the biggest fights in Bellator history. I think that's an absolutely super mega fight. I think it'd be massive for everybody. Everybody would be talking about it. So there's a lot of fucking exciting fights for me out there. It's a very exciting time for the Bellator bantamweight division, which is the deepest division in MMA. It's just absolutely stacked and it's insane. And I think it's finally getting the respect that it deserves. So I think the winner of Patchy versus Stots faces Patricio Pitbull, and then I think by the end of 23, I'll be fighting the winner of that for the belt, or maybe the beginning of 2024. But either way, it's going to be a hell of a fucking year this year and next year.
For sure, man. Thank you so much for your time. All the best for March 21st, and we will catch up with you at some point in the future.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.